Today's video will be on gradient intercept form. So our learning goals for today are as follows. By the end of the lesson, you'll be able to state the gradient and the y-intercept for graphs from given relationships, rearrange linear equations to conform to a given form, find the value of the gradient and y-intercept from given linear relations, and sketch linear graphs using the gradient and y-intercept. Okay, so we've got a formula here, y equals mx plus c. So this is the gradient intercept form of a straight line equation. Okay, so when we look at this, y equals mx plus c, m may look familiar to you. You've done it from a previous video. M is the gradient. So m will be our gradient, and c may also look familiar to you as well. C, if you remember, is the y-intercept. So with our formula, y equals mx plus c, where m is the gradient and c is the y-intercept. So if the y-intercept is 0, obviously the equation becomes y equals mx, and if that's the case, it means there's no y-intercept, which means the graphs actually pass through the origin. So whenever you see some sort of linear relation in this formula, you know it's going to pass through the origin. So to sketch a graph using the gradient intercept method, what we need to do is we need to locate the y-intercept. So in our formula, we'll be able to see the y-intercept. That'll be that c part on the end there. And then we also need to use the gradient to find a second point. So for instance, if you had the formula y equals 25 x plus 4, you could actually graph from there because you'll know that the y-intercept will be 4, so it'll intercept the y-axis at 4, and then you can use the gradient, which is 2 over 5, to find a second point. So to do that, remember the gradient is the rise over the run. So the rise would be 2, so you're going up 2, and the run will be 5, so you're moving across 5. So that way you could have 2 points, connect them together, and you'd be able to draw the line. Okay, so we'll have some worked examples. The first thing we'll do is we'll rearrange some formulas, and then we'll have a go at actually graphing them. So worked examples, rearrange the following linear equations into the form shown in the brackets. So for A, we've actually, I'll write that a bit further up the page. So for A, we've got 4x plus 2y equals 10. We want to rearrange it into that normal linear equation, which is y equals mx plus c. So we've got 4x plus 2y equals 10. Now, it's just about rearranging formulas by doing the inverse. We know how to do that. So we're going to move the 4x to the other side because we don't want the y and the x on the same side. So we're going to take 4x from both sides. So that leaves us with 2y equals 10 take 4x. And now I'm just going to rearrange that because we want the x before the y-intercept. So 2y equals negative 4x plus 10. You can see there I've just rearranged it. I've taken that subtract sign with that term, and the 10 is obviously a positive 10, so I've taken that sign with it as well. Now I don't want 2y, I only want 1y, so to do that I'm going to have to divide both sides by 2. So 2y divided by 2 is just 1y, so just y. Negative 4x divided by 2, so a negative divided by a positive is going to be a negative, so we've got negative 2x, and 10 divided by 2 is just going to give us 5. So for our first one, we've rearranged our formula, and it's y equals negative 2x plus 5. Okay, so for B, I'm just going to clear the screen. For B, we've got y equals 4x take 7, and we want it to be in the formula of ax plus by equals d. So we want the x and the y's together on the same side. Okay, so it's up to you which way you move it around. So might take 4x from both sides. 4x, take 4x. So y take 4x equals negative 7. So that could be one way of doing it. So now I've got it in that same formula that it wanted us in, that ax plus the by equals the d. And again, you can rearrange it if you want to put it in the ax first. So yeah, 4x plus y equals negative 7. So that could be one way of doing it. So now it's rearranged into that same formula. Okay, for our worked example, so we need to find the value of the gradient and the y-intercept for these relations and sketch them on the graph. Okay, so it's in that formula that we know. So y equals mx plus c. So m is the gradient. So our gradient is 2. So if you're thinking, oh, how do I graph that? That's just a single number, it's not a fraction. Remember 2 equals 2 over 1. And C is our y-intercept, so our y-intercept equals -1. So we can now plot this. So our y-intercept is -1. So we're going to look in our graph and find -1, which would sit here. So this is where it's going to cross our graph. And then we're going to look at our gradient. So it's a positive gradient. So as we move left to right, it's going to be, our y value is going to be increasing. Because remember, gradient is rise over run. So it's going to go up by 2 because our rise is 2. So 1, 2, which will leave me at +1, and the run is 1. So I'm going to move over 1. And there are our 2 points. So then you're going to grab your ruler, which remember I don't have, and you're going to connect together, draw a line, finish it with some arrows. Yours is going to be beautiful and straight, unlike mine. And then obviously we will need to label it as our last step. So 2x, take 1. And that would be our graph. Okay, for our second one, we need to find the value of the gradient and the y-intercept for the relations and sketch the graph. Now, if you look at our formula, that is not in a formula that we like, because remember, we want y equals mx plus c, and we don't have that. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to rearrange that formula so it gets into the order that we like. So remember, I'll write up here, we want y equals mx plus c. So we're going to have to rearrange that. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take x from both sides so that we now have y by itself. So I've got 2y equals 6 take x, or we can rearrange that, so 2y equals -x plus 6. Now we need to get 1y, not 2y, so we're going to divide both sides by 2. So y equals, so -x divided by 2, so -x over 2 plus 6 divided by 2 is 3. So now we can actually work out our intercepts and our gradient. So our y-intercept is our c value, which is on the end there, which is 3, and our gradient is -1 over 2, so -12x. So we are going to find our y-intercept, which is 3, put a dot here, so this is our first point, so it's intercepting the y at that 3. Now this is a negative gradient, so remember our gradient is our rise over our run. So our rise is -1, so it's going to go down 1, and our run is 2 and across 2. So that would be our point there. So we've gone down 1, which is here, and then across 2, which is there. And from there we're just going to use our ruler to connect our points and extend it out, because it's a straight line, it's a linear relation, so we can extend it out a bit, like so. And last of all, remember, we are going to label it. So I'm going to label it in the form of y equals mx plus c, so y equals -x over 2 plus 3, or you could put that original formula as well. And that is the end of today's video. As usual, any questions, make sure you come and see me in class.